Welcome to the Aviation Pros Podcast, the go-to platform for professionals in the aviation industry. Powered by AviationPros.com, the leading source for comprehensive news, insights, and data on airport operations. Whether you're focused on airport management, improvement programs, ground handling, equipment, MRO, or FBO operations, we've got you covered with the expertise and resources you need to stay ahead. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Aviation Pros Podcast. I'm Joe Petrie, Editor-in-Chief of Airport Business. Serving the same market as the world's busiest airport, Fulton County Executive Airport serves as a crucial role in providing connectivity in the Atlanta metro area. With great proximity to core areas of the city and recent upgrades to infrastructure, leadership is preparing to take its service to the next level, especially with the World Cup coming to town in 2026. Fulton County Director of Public Works David Clark recently sat down with me to discuss the future of the airport, its continued improvements, and how they're preparing to bring operations to the next level. Well, David, thank you very much for speaking with me today. I know you have a lot going on, especially when it comes to the Fulton County Executive Airport and some of the challenges and, opportunities that present itself. So let's start from the beginning here. Tell me a little bit about the current state of the Fulton County Airport and how you see it working with the overall aviation system in the Atlanta area.
Fulton County's airport has been kind of in a stagnant state for the first 20 years of the new century, so from 2000 to about 2020. And there was a couple of reasons for that. There was some financial challenges. It is an airport that is 100% self-sufficient. We do not receive any taxpayer money through the general fund, through property tax, for here in Fulton County. So anything that we generate gets to stay on the airfield, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we generate funds to cover our day-to-day needs. And up until about 2015 or so, we had a few ground lease tenants that we received a nice monthly payment from, as well as we do get a certain percentage of the fuel that is sold on the airfield. And for the longest time, that was our largest sources of income. And that came to about $2 to $2.5 million a year. But our expenses were also $2 or $2.5 million a year. So we're doing well just to stay above water, stay on afloat. But we really didn't have an opportunity or a dedicated funding stream to actually do some of the things that we knew that the airport needed to not only better serve our current tenants, but ways to attract new tenants and, more importantly, compete with other general aviation airports in the Atlanta region. That changed in 2016 when we were able to enter with a long-term lease with UPS, the shipping company. They took a bunch of land that was bought by the airport but served no aeronautical purpose. It was actually non-aeronautical designated land. And they put one of the largest distribution centers in the East Coast on that lot. And that resulted in a annual payment of about $1.5 million a year in ground lease revenue. And so we've been able to, over the last couple of years, really start reimagining the airport now that we have a dedicated funding source that we can use either for projects that we pay 100% cash for, but more importantly, we now have a dedicated revenue stream for matches to state and federal projects.
In 2024, there was a completed updated master plan for the airport. Can you tell me what were some of the major points from that that you're looking forward to and trying to implement over the next couple of years, and how does it kind of change the direction or enhance the direction of the airport?
Yep. As part of the UPS project, one of the first areas that we identified was a area on the north side of the airfield, which for the longest time remained undeveloped, primarily because it was a very uneven topography for that area. There wasn't a good, flat, pad-ready area. Fortunately for us, UPS had a ton of excess dirt as they were building their distribution facility, so we were actually able to get them to bring all that dirt over to the airfield and create what we call the North Terminal area. And that has four major components of it. We have plans for a new fixed-base operator to be on that site. That is under lease right now, and the project is still being engineered. The second main parcel on the North Terminal area is under a long-term lease with Norfolk Southern as part of their move to the greater Atlanta area a couple of years ago. They needed a place for their aviation department, and we were lucky enough to land them there. The third area is another hangar development that is under engineering right now for a small construction firm. It's an aviation department that is based here in Atlanta. And then the fourth area is a new customs facility. We get about somewhere between 4 and 6 international flights a week here at Fulton County Executive Airports. What happens now, which happens in a lot of places, about an hour or so out, the pilot radios to the customs agents, the border control officers from Hartsfield, and they drive up and they meet the plane on the tarmac and clear the plane and its passengers after they land. We are in the process of building a new customs facility that will be theirs 100% use. That way they can work out of an actual office instead of working out of their front seat of their pickup trucks that they drive up. But more importantly, they have a place to properly clear the plane. There will be a place inside the building to be able to handle any unfortunate incidents with a individual who may be on the plane, or if they're bringing something on the plane that they shouldn't be. So we have that. So that was the first main part of our master plan. The second main part dealt with our crosswind runway. We have two runways here at Fulton County Executive Airport. Our main runway is about 5,900 linear feet, and we have a crosswind runway of about 3,900 feet. And what's fairly unique for general aviation in the Atlanta area, 90% of all of our traffic is jet-based traffic. We have very few turboprop or old Cessna-style planes coming and going. So that crosswind runway is not needed or even used much anymore. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was repurpose a lot of that property away from being a runway and actually closing that runway and converting it to a taxiway, which will then open up many acres of property at the end of the runway for development of hangar space. And we're right now in the process. The runway has already been approved to be closed by the FAA. So we're in the process now of permanently closing it with the necessary markings, lighting, as well as some conversion from a runway to a taxiway. Plus, we also are surveying the area to be able to develop land parcels that we hope to bring to the market at the end of this year for ground leases. Depending on the size of the hangars and how many tenants we may have as part of that project, we anticipate somewhere between 6 and 8 hangars will be developed on that property. So everybody knows hangar space is at a premium. We think that's going to help us a lot in competing for new tenants on the airfield. And the third major area of our master plan was the extension of our runway. As I said, our main runway is 5,900 linear feet. We'd like to go to 7,000, and the main reason why we want to go to 7,000 is the planes that are coming in today For instance, we have several tenants who own Gulfstream 650s. Everybody knows that they can take off from Atlanta and make it to Western and Central Europe nonstop if they could take off fully fueled. The problem with us is 5,900 linear feet is too short most of the time for them to be able to be fully fueled when they take off. So what they wind up doing is they're partially fueled at our airport, they take off, and then they get into the Hartsfield airspace and traffic pattern, land at Hartsfield, get fully fueled there, and then take off again to head off to Europe. Obviously, nobody wants to do more operations on an aircraft than is absolutely necessary, and more importantly, Hartsfield doesn't want our tenants in their airspace. It's taken away from their main purpose of being a large commercial airport. So we're really hoping that once we get some of these other projects done, we'll be able to attract some federal funding assistance to do that extension.
I want to touch further on the runway extension. Besides being able to accommodate those lessening the aircraft maintenance or fueling and everything like that, how will this extension enhance the airport's capacity to accommodate not just more aircraft, but even larger aircraft?
Well, and that's a good point. But one of the things that we've been very careful in making sure as we talk about our plans, especially with the neighborhoods that surround the airport, we really don't have any desire to attract larger aircraft. The Gulfstream 650 is our design aircraft. It's the aircraft that's already here today. So we really want to do a better job of being able to serve the needs of tenants with their existing air fleet as opposed to attracting larger airplanes. One of the things that a lot of people are surprised to hear when they hear that UPS is leasing such a large portion of the airport property, they immediately assume that there's some sort of cargo either planned or visioned for the airport, and it's not. The reason why UPS chose the site that they did, it's literally a mile from the interchange of I-20 and 285. So from a distribution standpoint, they can go north, south, east, and west very quickly with their trucks. And so therefore, they needed the location, not necessarily the airport. And so we've been trying very, very hard to make sure that everybody understands that we're not trying to introduce commercial service to the airport or even to start attracting a large set of passenger charter aircraft. What we're looking for is really to satisfy the needs of the current tenants.
And jumping back to mentioning the new customs facility, how do you anticipate that's going to improve the international flight operations, and what's the timeline for completion on that?
Sure. Convenience, number one, that's the main reason for it. Also, Homeland Security is kind of demanding us to do that because they don't want to be working out of their trucks anymore either, especially as international traffic continues to increase, especially on the private general aviation side. The plans are completely done. In fact, just last week, Homeland Security signed off on the building specs as well as the design plans. So we're actually going to put that out for bid or for construction and hopefully have that awarded by the first part of the summer. Ideally, we'd love to have it built before the World Cup in June of 2026. We expect it to be a 9 to 10 month construction project, so it's still within the realm of possibility, but everybody knows construction can sometimes be a very fickle entity, and we're certainly going to try to make that happen.
Yes, everybody that's listening to this knows exactly how that can go with some of these projects, that's for sure. Now, I understand, too, that the airport recently got a $6 million FAA grant. Can you tell me a little bit about the specific applications and how you're looking to invest that at the airport?
Yeah, and that's actually two separate grants, one for $2 million and one for about $4 million. The $4 million one is the one that came through the FAA, and that's actually being used towards the customs facility. So we're excited about that. The other $2 million is mostly funded through state aeronautical resources, and that is going to resurface our main runway. The last time our main runway was resurfaced was back in about 2004, so a little over 20 years ago. Most people know that pavement's useful life is about 20 years. So we are using that state grant for a resurfacing of the entire runway. And the good news is we've done some preliminary borings and tests of the existing pavements, and we're fortunate that the pavement itself is in very good structural condition, so there's not a lot of structural fixing that we have to do before the project starts. It is simply, and again, I always use the word simply, but then I also recognize that nothing is simple in aviation or construction, but the idea is just to mill off the first couple of inches of asphalt and replace it with new asphalt. And that's going to help us a lot because, as most people know, unlike when you're resurfacing an interstate roadway where you can have all the vehicle traffic just moved over a lane while you're working on one lane, we have to shut down the entire airport for the resurfacing project. And we certainly recognize how disruptive that's going to be to our corporate tenants. So anything we can do to minimize and shrink that length of time that the airport will have to be closed is certainly going to make everybody happy in the long run.
Now, one of the interesting things on this, I understand, in the area is Fulton County's Renew the District program or initiative that it has in place. Can you elaborate a little bit on that Renew the District and how the anticipated impact on the airport and surrounding communities is going to be?
Sure. The Renew the District initiative is something that our current chairman started probably about 5 or 6 years ago, right before COVID. And at one time, the Fulton Industrial Boulevard corridor was the largest contiguous industrial park east of the Mississippi. I don't believe it's that anymore, but at one time it was. And as most people know, sometimes with industrial uses, it doesn't attract a lot of the best people at times, especially after hours. The corridor had a lot of problems with drugs, prostitution, a little bit of burglary, and those types of crimes, and just a general sense of a place that you really didn't want to be a lot of the time of the day, and especially at night. So one of the things that the chairman, as part of the Renew the District initiative, did was targeted a number of known problem areas along the corridor, primarily motels and hotel locations that were well past their normal useful life, and they were the places that you would rent by the hour almost. So he used a number of general fund money, and we wanted to use general fund money and not airport money, so it didn't have to have an aeronautical use attached to it long time, to buy several of these properties and actually demolish them. And we are now in the process of repackaging new sites for new investments and development, primarily dealing towards some of the services that the industrial businesses that are on the corridor need, primarily restaurants, some of not high-end, but retail type of establishments that the workers need. Right now, one of the biggest problems, and why the airport's looking forward to this, is the closest restaurant to the airport is Wendy's, and that's about the only one. I like Wendy's. I worked at Wendy's in a high school, but Wendy's is not where you want to eat every single day, just like any other restaurant. And so the problem that we have is, especially when a business comes in with their pilot and their flight crew, when they have to stay near the airport with the plane, there's no place for them to go. And so we're hoping to be able to bring in some restaurants that's going to be able to support those needs during the day.
Between initiatives like this and then the infrastructure projects that you're investing in at the airport, how are you collaborating with local businesses and stakeholders to ensure success on this?
We're fortunate. There is a community improvement district, a CID is what we call them in Georgia, where businesses along the corridor form an association, and it's more than just a traditional business association. They actually vote to tax themselves in addition to the city and county taxes that they may be subject to. And that money goes directly to the CID for improvements in the corridor. Sometimes they're transportation improvements, sometimes they're landscaping improvements, those types of things that the business community supports and wants to reinvest in. So we've been able to work very closely with them. They actually have their main office on airport property. We have a couple of small commercial office space. They're one of our tenants. So we've been able to have a frontline conversation with the businesses of the community. Plus, there's a very strong neighborhood association that represents the residential components near Fulton Industrial Boulevard. And we've been having very good conversations with them, as well as we've been doing more and more events on the airfield to encourage their participation. For instance, last fall, we had a movie night where we showed Top Gun 2 Maverick on the apron of the airfield, on a kind of a blow-up, almost mobile drive-in movie screen, and everybody brought their chairs, and we had a couple of food trucks, and so people were able to actually enjoy a beautiful fall night, watch the movie, and actually be kind of much more closer to the actual airfield than most of the time they've ever been. Plus, we've had a couple of our clients, our tenants on the airfield, where they brought their planes over, and so obviously with little kids that was attracted to the events, they loved the fact that they could get up close and personal to some of those planes.
And speaking of the tenants, what measures are being implemented to minimize disruptions to the current airport operations during the construction phases going on?
Certainly that is a challenge, and what works for one tenant doesn't work for another. We have one tenant who doesn't understand why we can't do more work during the day because most of their flights are at night. And we have other tenants who don't understand why we can't do more work at night because all their flights are during the day. It's hard to satisfy everybody, so we really don't try to satisfy everybody, but what we do try to do is to ensure that we are constantly communicating and providing as accurate and up-to-date information to them as soon as we know it. Good example is the runway rehabilitation project, the resurfacing project we talked about a little bit earlier. When that gets started, we actually bid the project two ways. One, a traditional 16-hour day project, or a 24/7 type of operation. And we got two different bid prices, and we got a cheaper one for the we didn't get a cheaper one, but a reasonable price for the 24/7 operation. So we're actually going to do that continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for about 10 days, because that's how long we think the closure is going to be, compared to a traditional 16-hour day construction cycle, which we thought was going to last somewhere between 15 and 17 days. So we almost cut a good third of the time off. And that was one of the things that the tenants asked for and we talked about. The other thing that we're very cautious of and making sure that we understand, PDK, where most of the tenants will move temporarily to while our airfield is closed, is also scheduling a major rehabilitation project this year. And they are going to have to close their airfield during it. And so we've worked very closely with them so both airports would not be closed at the same time. So we can accept their traffic when PDK has to close, and they can accept our traffic when we have to close. And then the other thing that everybody is looking at is next year is the main World Cup, and we certainly want to have all this done before then. But this summer is the club series of the World Cup, which is still very popular and still going to generate a lot of international and national traffic as the clubs play around the United States. Atlanta is one of the host cities for the Club World Cup. And so we want to make sure that none of that work that we have planned, either on the PDK side or on our side, is scheduled during that 3-week period during the Club World Cup timeline. So those are the types of things that we engage our tenants. We certainly hear them. Like I said, we can't satisfy everybody's concerns, but I think most of the time, as long as they know they're being listened to and we're trying our best, the inconvenience is tolerated, although it may not be completely liked.
And speaking of the World Cup, that is a very unique and very large event, and something that most airport managers don't need to anticipate anywhere in the world, because it could be, a once-in-a-lifetime event. Tell me, what role do you see the Fulton County Executive Airport playing as far as helping serve these fans and teams and everyone else that's going to be coming into the region for the games?
Well, simply put, our airport is the closest to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So certainly those that do have general aviation aircraft, corporate jets, are going to be looking to us to get to the airport, to get to the games. We've been told that it's basically each World Cup day is almost like the Super Bowl, and we just survived Super Bowl here recently. And we think we're all set for it. Working very closely with both of our fixed-based operators, we've been able to actually store up to almost 300 airplanes on the airfield during those large events at Mercedes-Benz. So we feel very confident that with hopefully the customs facility operational, the runway being resurfaced, and our partnership with the two FBOs, we're going to be well positioned to meet the demands, especially the increased amount of traffic.
And how are you preparing staff and facilities to handle the anticipated increase in travel?
Fortunately, from my perspective at least, Fulton County does not have its own FBO. Those are contracted out. So a lot of the day-to-day interactions and planning with the aircraft is handled either by the corporate aviation departments themselves or the FBOs. So we don't have to get involved in that side. But what we do have to make sure that we are ready for is on the maintenance side, whether it be the grass cutting and those types of on-field maintenance activities, the runway checks, the insurance that the lighting system is operational and functional, as well as once they get off of the air side of the airport, make sure that the land side is also ready to have the necessary car agreements in place, the Ubers, the Lyfts, and those types of things.
And my last question for you today, with all of the different projects going on, all the things you're preparing for, events and everything, tell me, looking over the next 5 to 10 years, what's your definition of success?
Indication of success to us is going to be having somewhere between 8 and 10 new corporate tenants on the field with hangar space, having the third FBO fully operational and servicing a large number of transient aircraft that come through. The customs facility is being used hopefully on a daily basis as opposed to just a few times a week that we're seeing now. And it won't be complete in the next 5 to 10 years, I do not think, but certainly have some sort of long-term commitment through the state and through the FAA for our 7,000-foot runway extension.
David, it's been a pleasure talking to you today and learning more about the airport, and I can't wait to see where all the success takes you in the future.
We can't wait to show it to you, Joe.
Thanks for tuning in to the Aviation Pros podcast. Stay ahead in airport operations and leadership by subscribing to our Airport Business Daily newsletter, your go-to source for the latest industry insights. And don't forget to explore even more at AviationPros.com, the home of exclusive content for aviation professionals like you. I'm Joe Petrie. We'll catch you next time.